Welcome to the Tonawanda Football Hall of Fame YouTube channel. I'm Matt Helinski. Thanks so much for joining us today. Got a terrific guest here from his California home. He's a 1976 Hall of Famer. He played for the Lumberjacks during the 58 through 1960 seasons. He is the one and the only Frank Castiglione. Frank, how are you? Long time? It's been a long time in the making trying to get you to do this.
Yeah, I know it. Welcome to my home here in California.
It's great. Welcome to the YouTube channel. It's been a long time, and
yes,
for people who aren't aware of you, give us a little bit of your background growing up in NT.
Well, I grew up in the projects, which, along with a lot of my friends in high school, and with that said, there was always the big guys. We always called the big guys, which were older than us, which I think made me excel a little bit more when I was playing against people at my age. So that kind of inspired me in my younger days, because we always called them the big guys because they were all 5-6 years older than us. And we got to play baseball, sandlot baseball, and sometimes football in the park behind the projects. We used to play there all the time, constantly. And being in the projects was always easy to get a game up between two teams. There was always a bunch of kids always willing to play. So, but the background from growing up in the projects was a good thing for me.
Were you a three-sport guy? You played football, basketball, and baseball?
I played baseball. I played football, and baseball. I left there my junior year. I didn't play, and I think my senior year I didn't play. Yeah, no, I didn't play baseball. Just my sophomore year I played, and then I left it in my junior year and my senior year. I just played football.
Back then, you didn't play any organized football. It was all sandlot at that point, right?
Exactly, because back in those days we didn't have Little League football, so we were introduced to football in high school, which was kind of new to me, being organized. And of course, back then my freshman coach was Pat Wiles, and he was a good coach. I really liked Pat Wiles, especially as a instructor. He was very good for us in those days. But actually, we were introduced to football in high school, and of course I was pretty much into baseball pretty much growing up in Little League. And I played for the Double K Giants, which a lot of my friends played for there. And then half of my teammates were from the projects. And George Miller was our coach. He was brutal. He's playing with youngsters. I was pitching to him one day, and he had a line shot, hit me right in the nose, blackened both my eyes, and he felt bad for almost 2 or 3 weeks. But he didn't let up at all. I mean, he was quite a coach.
When you said the projects, what part of town was that, and who were some of the guys that you played ball with back then?
The projects were on Sweeney Street, pretty much. Sweeney. Let's see. I'm trying to think of the name of the streets now. I've been gone a long time, but it was along the canal, and of course the park was behind the projects, which we used to play pretty much all the time. And Ronnie Dearmeyer, he just passed away not too long ago. He was one of the older guys, and he used to take us under Dick Wrazin was another gentleman, another classmate. I'm trying to think. There was the Heinrich boys. They used to play with us all the time. There was a gentleman named Arnold Shoemeister. I used to play with. He used to live around the corner. I'm trying to think some of the other guys that played organized baseball and football while I was in high school. I really can't think of any other. I know Ronnie Dearmeyer played, Dick Wrazin played. Of course, they were older than me, but I remember them so much. Of course, Johnny Fusera played baseball with me also. So
I was going to say, how did that relationship between you and John Tessera start?
Johnny and I were like brothers. Everybody thought that we didn't like each other because naturally I got hurt my third year, my junior year, and Johnny got his big start. So everybody thought, but we were like brothers. I mean, Johnny lost his mother when he was young, and he used to come in my mom and dad at a restaurant on Oliver Street, and he used to frequent that all the time. But we, even after school, I mean, he went off to Houston. I went to Penn State, and we loved each other like brothers. I mean, he spent a lot of time with us. We worked out summers every summer together. So, and like I say, my mom used to like him. My mom sort of took him in like another son. So, yeah, we had a good relationship.
At what point growing up did you decide you were going to play football for North Tonawanda?
When I was in high school, Pat Wiles introduced me to football, and if I'm not mistaken, I think I actually played second string, and then things got better towards the end of the year, and then of course George Vetter kind of liked me, and he moved me up to the ranks of playing my sophomore year on the varsity. So, yes.
How would you describe playing for George Vetter?
Well, there was ups and downs with George Vetter. He was an excellent coach. Of course, him being in the service, I think he brought a lot of that to the game. And I kind of felt so, especially more so after I graduated. And, it's kind of funny when I got hurt, I wasn't, I had to make a heck of a comeback, and it wasn't easy because my mom and my dad wasn't too happy about me getting hurt. And of course he didn't have the insurance, so I couldn't get the surgery that I needed to repair my cartilage. So what transpired is I went to see Dr. Godfrey. I don't know if you know who Dr. Godfrey is. Dr. Godfrey was the Buffalo Bills orthopedic surgeon. And which transpired from that is he says, well, you have staircase at home? I says, yes. And he says, start using your staircase. Let's build up the muscles around that knee so you don't have a lot of flexibility. And I did that. And in fact, not in favor of my father having surgery, so I wore out his linoleum on his floor, on his stairs going to my basement. So, which was kind of ironic. So, but I progressed. Of course, that knee, I really didn't have it operated on, believe it or not, until 2006. I always had Dr. Godfrey in my head. And the fact of the matter is, and he was really gracious enough to give me all that free advice. And I always had that leg built up to where it didn't bother me too much. But then in Penn State, my second year, it blew it out again and caused my career period, because I'm going to probably push a little of this. Clint Small from Tonawanda is the one that got me a 2-year deal with Penn State with an option. And then my second year, I kind of blew my knee out. And that kind of caused the fracas. I thought maybe they would probably try to rehab me and maybe do the surgery, but that didn't end. But it ended. They gave me a 2-year BA degree, and I was on my way out the door. But with that said, Joe Pa, which is Joe Panero, Patrino, yeah. He was in contact. He sent me Christmas cards up till he passed away. And what transpired in Penn State, believe it or not, Joe Paterno had nothing to do with the administration. He had nothing to do with any of that. And I just wanted to add that because he was like another father to me. But with that said, that's it, buddy. So,
Who were some of the guys you played with on varsity over those years at North Tonawanda?
well, it's kind of funny. I played with Ron Jumulu, Volker Naz, Bert Gore, of course, which it's kind of funny. You just did a episode with him, and it's funny. He sort of kind of disappeared. He went to Wyoming, and then he went up to Alaska, which is a veterinarian up there. You probably know all that. And I didn't talk to Bert. It's kind of funny. I did one of these views with him on Messenger on Facebook, and we had a great conversation. In fact, we would talk for like 3 hours. We were all pretty close back in those days. I mean, that team. I don't know how much you knew about that team, but my future brother-in-law was in the Army in Seoul, Korea, and he sent me a letter. He says, I'm reading an article. He says, your team was ranked number 2 in the country. I said, and he said behind a team called from Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania. You know who the quarterback was?
Don't name it.
Very good. Wow, yes. So, I never saw that any place printed. And, but, with that said, I was honored, especially being behind Joe Namath, So that it was quite a team. I mean, that team, I think we only had like 28 to 30 points scored against us all year. And I remember a couple of games, people were leaving at halftime. I think Trot, we had like 28 points without running a play from scrimmage. They give you an idea of our defense, but it was a great team. The memories are so great, and we really enjoyed it. And talking to Bert, and then one day here, about 5, 6, 7 years ago, my doorbell rings at my house, and I open the door, and he says, "Do I know you?" It's Ron Jumula, right? He come to visit me, and of course, he lost his sister early before he passed away. And I spoke to him when he got out of the hospital, and I knew he wanted to come home and die, to be honest with you. But he's very special to me. Volker Naz would always be this special to me because he brings up a memory because my junior, no, it was my senior year. This is one of the things in Nick Seaback, why I like a conversation about Nick Seaback. I liked him. I know I used to come back in the summertime, and I used to meet Nick Seaback at a coffee little diner on Meadow Drive. We used to shoot a breeze, and we used to talk about our old days and reminisce a little bit. But he always remembered. There was a game that we played. I think it was either LaSalle or Lockport. Naturally we played the single wing for George Vedder, and it was either student body left or student body right. And of course, when I was a junior, I played left halfback, and they switched me over to right halfback. So my bad leg was on the outside, and so we ran this 4-25 reverse. I scored a touchdown. It was about 40-yard touchdown. So it was called back because of holding on Volker Naz. So we ran the play 15 yards back, and we ran the same play. I ran again for a touchdown. And then got called for holding again on the same person, Volker Naz. And then we ran again another 15 yards back. I ran again, same play, and I ran it for a TD. Nick Seaback thought, and every time I would see him, he would remind me of that because it was stuck in his mind. Because he said, Frank, he said that had to be some kind of a record. He said, I've been trying to pursue that to see if that's some kind of a record. But it was great because, it was like great reminiscing with Nick Seaback, which he was so great, and he was so gracious, and he was a good backfield coach too.
Could you guys relate to Seaback a lot better than with George Vedder? Because Seaback was Seaback was younger than George.
Exactly, but yeah, George Vedder was the head coach, believe it, and you knew it. But Nick Seaback, I attached myself to Nick Seebeck, especially after I got hurt. He was there for me. And in fact, Johnny and I used to work out, and he knew that, and we used to work, behind the high school, and we used to run the bleachers, and we used to work out there pretty much all summer. And Nick Seebeck used to come out and join us, which I thought was very special, But with that said, it's Nick Seebeck was very special to me.
Describe the feeling of playing at the old George Vetter Stadium.
Well, I don't know if a lot of people are not aware that field is very special. I don't know how much you know. You probably do know that field was built. Something, I guess there was quite a bit of what's the term that I'm trying to say? Ventilation underneath that field to where the water would run off properly. Did you know all that?
Well, yeah, the way the crown was on that field as well too.
Yes. I just see they just took down the goalpost, which I kind of had a little tear in my eye when they tore the golf court, when they tore those golf posts down. It was a couple of days ago, right?
No, it was about a year ago that went down.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So no, that's okay. Time flies. Yeah. It happens.
Yes.
But what were the crowds like for those football games back then?
Well, no, it's kind of funny you said that, because I don't know. The Tonawanda game, we had over 10,000 people at that game. And in fact, we had over 10,000 people. We used to get a lot of people, but what was ironic about it is a lot of games, like I said earlier, people were leaving at halftime because it was like a murder. We sort of brutalized the other team so bad. I mean, I know 2 games. I know 1 game for sure. I think it was Todd. We did score like 28 to 30 points before running a play, which was kind of terrible. I mean, we were so dominant in those days, and but like I say, we all played together for 3-4 years. We kind of knew each other pretty good, and running a single wing for George Vetter, was always his cup of tea, so to speak.
Were you guys that good because of the talent? Was it the execution? Was it the play calling? Was it a combination of all of it, or what was it?
I think it was a combination of all of it, because the fact of the matter that we gelled so much, especially being together, all those 3-4 years together, we kind of knew. In fact, Joe Nickpon, he was a junior. He was so good and so dedicated, and I want to give him a shout out. I kind of miss him. He would always say to me in the huddle, he said, "Follow me, Frank, follow me." And it was ironic, and he was good. He was good, and I would follow him. And those pulling guards, sure made me look good, to be honest with you. So, I mean, I had that project desire for the being competitive, but something that people don't realize, that playing those sports at that age, and when you excel and you get back to think about it, you say it really is a character building process. And I think it's so great that I went through all that, because it kind of set my life moving forward. So it was very nice that it's happened to me. And I was good. My dad and I didn't get along too well. And that's why Nick Seebeck was special to me. And of course, Johnny was very special to me, and we were like brothers. So,
were the practices harder than the games?
Yes, and I kind of feeling that now. I don't know how much you know about the 7-man sleds, the 2-man sleds, which I think they kind of outlawed them right now. I mean, those were apparatus that sat in the back of that high school for years, and it was lifted all the coaching bodies, off those, especially the backs usually did the 2-man sleds, and I can honestly say from experience, talking to Dr. Young and the other doctor back there in Tonawanda, they were so great surgeons. Dr. Young, and there was another doctor. which when I left there, when he told me about how bad my back was, he said you should have never hit those 7-man sleds that probably what probably hindered you and did spoiled your back the way it was. But anyways, yeah, I think the practice is very competitive between second string, third string, very competitive. Everybody wanted to make their mark, I think. So yes, very competitive.
Could the second stringers and third stringers play for other teams rather easily?
Oh yes, I think the second team could. The second team could. And naturally, they went on the next season. They had a decent season when Johnny graduated. They had a decent season. I think they only lost one game, I think, or 2 games. I could be wrong about that, but he had a pretty good season too. But Johnny was my age. He was sick when he was young, and he lost a year. So John's birthday is like, see, my birthday, of course, is tomorrow, and his, I think, is June 6th. I think I'm not mistaken. So we were both Geminis. So that's another reason I think we got along so well, And Johnny was very special to me, but so is the game. I mean, I look back, it's like I told you earlier, when I go back, those people still talk about me playing football. My goodness, I mean, that's so long ago, but it's great because, I moved to California, not knowing anybody, so versus me knowing everybody in North Tonawanda at those days. It was quite an education when I moved out here, and I raised 3 great sons here, and which is good. And they always thank me every day for moving out here. So, but here we are.
What was the training like? Was there any weightlifting back there? Was there anything considering nutrition?
No, none of that. There was no weight training at all. It was more calisthenics, which we all did. In fact, we even off record, calisthenics was pretty much our way. There was no weight lifting in those days.
How about the grass drills in August?
The what?
The grass drills.
I'm sorry.
How were the grass drills in August?
Oh, the grass drills?
Yes.
Oh yeah, they were great. But remembering them, yeah, they were awesome. Yep.
Talk about what the Niagara Frontier League was like back then when you played.
It's kind of ironic you mentioned that. I know we drew a bye against Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls had a running back. His name was Jerry Tabrenis. He was awesome, and they always said we always wondered what would happen, but I think we would have beat him. Be honest with you, but that was one thing that I'll always remember. The only thing we had back in those days, which naturally they stopped eventually, is the travel time. Like when we played Olean, it was such a bus ride. And believe it or not, they almost beat us because we were pretty much fatigued so bad from that bus ride. I mean, we were falling on the field. Johnny and I were both falling on the field, and we couldn't figure out. We were so tired. But I think shortly after that, they kind of stopped that because of the traveling. So, which you probably know about that. But the league was always good, and it was pretty repetitious every single year, same teams pretty much. And of course, the TNT game they always saved for last, which everybody recognized it and everybody appreciated it. And, it's always 2 weeks after the regular season. And I got to play in 3 of those. So I was very happy. And, me scoring the last touchdown. In fact, that's, Clint Small remembers that. He said, I distinctly remember it. And let me tell you something. Clint Small was a great man. He helped a lot of people. He helped a lot of people on our side of the bridge too. And when I went, but like I said, he was a great man too.
How competitive were those TNT games?
Oh, very competitive. If you had it's like when we came in there undefeated, we were worried. We were really worried. And of course, we beat them 21-7, but it was a pretty fight. The thing, they pretty much, now I remember, in fact, Les Cheesley was part of that. I remember they were driving down the field, and they were kind of boisterous to us when they were down on our 15-yard line. Well, they made a big mistake being boisterous, and from that point on, the game was pretty much over because you didn't show us attitude, okay. And at that particular time, I think that was about the second quarter or the third quarter, and pretty much I think the game was pretty much in control after that. I scored that 70-yard pass touchdown. I have to tell you the story. My mother never watched me play. She was always afraid I was going to get hurt. She was at the Tonawanda game, and I heard the story from my dad, not from her. I was on that 70-yard pass play. I'm running for my life, and my mom had her purse in her hand. She was beating on a little girl in front of her, and she didn't realize she was doing that. She was just worried I was going to get caught or get hurt. And anyways, that little girl got some ice cream afterwards. But it's a story that I'll never forget because she was always afraid. She wouldn't come and watch me play because she was always afraid I was going to get hurt. But it was a great league. And like I say, of course, it's changed a little bit now because there's more teams involved. And of course, the classifications all changed too. So, yeah.
What were some of the best fields to play on in the NFL, and what were some of the worst ones to play at?
Well, Trot was one of the scary places to go. Niagara Falls, a little bit, but other than that, we didn't have pretty much issues with any other place. But I know back then there were some issues. I'd rather not talk about what I think or what they said about what was happening because it was kind of very dangerous thing that they were doing. But I'd rather not talk about that because I don't know how true it was,
There was a lot of racial tension back then, wasn't there?
Oh, of course there was. Of course there was. But not by me. And because naturally when I played college, there wasn't a problem. And, and that it's just my upbringing anyways. But yes, there was some tensions back in those days. Yes, sir.
You talk about all the wonderful things that playing for North Tonawanda. Let me ask you this. What wasn't so good playing for North Tonawanda in football?
Well, it's a good question. I can't really think of a bad thing because, my mindset's always been positive. I think that's why, I'm still 25 between my ears, So I've always had a positive attitude. Like I say, I raised three great sons with that attitude. In fact, my first wife, who just passed away not too long ago, which I loved her to death. She always used to say she had four boys and I was the oldest. When you're married at 21 years old and you raise three sons, that usually what happens. And when we first came to California, the first thing I did, I put this big 20 by 40 pool in my backyard. And my youngest son, being Italian, he was a blonde-headed towhead. We used to call him towhead, basically because he'd be in that pool constantly from morning till night. But of course, it's changed over the year. And actually, Pete ended up being the jock like his dad, more so than the other two. My oldest is a doctor. My middle son, which I'm proud of all my boys, my middle son is a very famous auto design engineer that worked for Chrysler, and they called my son Iacocca Jr. Because my son Dodge Challenger he designed saved Chrysler. So, but he's moved on, and I'm very proud of all of them. And of course, Pete, being the youngest, became the jock of the family. And here, about 40 years ago, 30 years. Let's see, Pete is 30 years younger than me. He had a major. Well, he went to Chaffey College, which was the largest scouted junior college in the state of California. He had a major league tryout when they had that expansion, that 5-team expansion back 30 years ago, and they called him. They told him, they said the kid lied about his age to stay by the phone. Well, that kid hung up by the phone. They never called him. But to be honest with you, he was better than me, and he was good enough to play. He still plays. Yeah, he's 40. He's 50 years old now, so he still plays. So, but that's where we are.
Do you have any regrets about your high school career?
Oh no, it's like I say, it was a building of character, and it was ironic too, because it's just like I told you a little bit earlier. When I moved to California, I didn't know anybody, and which was really rough for me. I mean, they wanted me to become a cop. I couldn't give anybody a police a ticket there in town. I knew everybody. So, but that's playing football and in high school, and for myself, it was really impressive for me in my future. So,
what sold you on Penn State? Was it when you went to go see Syracuse play Penn State and watch Jim Brown play?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because Jimmy Brown, they introduced tearaway shirts, and Jimmy Brown changed his shirt 4 times. I mean, that's how great he was. And going back to those days, all those All-Americans became they all were on Ed Sullivan's show. And of course, Sammy Valentine, which was my aunt's brother, he was also All-American. And it's kind of funny. They interviewed Jimmy Brown years after he retired. Naturally, he left early because you have to remember, because 75-80% of the time he was running the ball. They didn't pass that much back in those days. And he was always protecting his face. But he made a comment later on in his years of playing football. Somebody asked him who the toughest ball player he ever played against. So of course, it might have been because that he probably played against Sammy Valentine. He mentioned Sammy Valentine's Day was kind of named because it kind of surprised me that of course he probably played against him for 3 years in a row. So, but Sammy Valentine was I think it was a guard or a tackle, but he was great. And then Sammy, with Sammy, believe it or not, he took an executive job. He never played pro ball, and he was, I think, 45 or 47 years old. He was at a wedding and he had a massive heart attack and passed that at that age, which was detrimental really to the whole family, because the Valentine family was a big family. So, but I remember that.
When you got hurt the second time at Penn State and you knew it was the end, how hard was it for you to take the helmet and the pads off and not want to play anymore?
But that's funny. I didn't quit then. What transpired is I played 2 years for the Toronto Argonauts. My future father-in-law happened to know the owner of the Toronto Argonauts because he was in horse racing. So he got me a tryout. So I played my 2 years for Toronto Argonauts also. And I played with Dickie Post. He was from San Diego State. He was a running back. He was actually smaller than me, believe it or not. But again, I had my leg issue, and I played my second season. I had the same issue with my leg, so that came to an end. But I really enjoyed that. I mean, that was really nice. I was really too small to play the NFL, And then when I had my first surgery in 2006, it was kind of funny. I'll tell you a story about that. They gave me a local, and they had a sheet in front of me, and I'm feeling everything they're doing. And they woke me up and they said, Frank, we've got an issue here. You have so much bone loss. We're going to have to do some cutting, and you're going to lose probably about 2 or 3 inches of height because it was so wore. And it was really bad. I waited so long. So what transpired is they were trying different prostheses and nothing was working. And I said to the doctor, I says, and I had the sheet, I could feel him pulling all this prosthesis on and off and pounding because you can feel them pounding. I says, doctor, what are you doing down there? He said, are you building a house? They all started laughing and they all walked away from the table. And he says, Frank, you're going to believe that now. They all walked away from the table. And so it's like ironic, but they finally got one that fit. He had to put a wedge in there. Is Dr. David Anderson here locally, and he's still practicing. This was his rookie year. I call it rookie year. It's but when he first operated on me, but I still talk to him to this day, and everybody, all his people want to know how old he is, and I don't know how old it is, and he says don't tell him, but it's a story that I'll never forget because that was 2006. But then what transpired on top of that, them cutting all that bone is naturally. I was walking around like Chester from Gunsmoke. I know if you remember all that, but I had to have the other leg. So I had to have the other leg done because I was walking around like Chester. I had a special shoe made, cost me $500 to give me a lift, but that looked so terrible. So I finally had the other leg done. And believe it or not, I had the recovery for that right leg was worse than my left leg. But anyways, that's the story there.
How big were you when you played high school? How big were you when you played college?
I was 5'9", 5'10".
And how big? How big were you when you played for Toronto?
Toronto, about the same, 175 pounds. Yeah. That's pretty much tops for me. And I'm weighing 175 pounds, but I was up to 240 pounds. Johnny put on some weight too, but he just had a knee replacement. Talking to him here about 2 or 3 months ago, trying to get him to do this interview, but
some guys want to talk to me. Some guys don't want to talk to me, and they have their reasons, and that's okay. Maybe he'll want to one of these days, and then again, maybe he won't, and I respect that one way or another.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think he does too. I mean, I don't know really what happened. I have some ideas, but that's his problem, not mine, and I can understand to a certain point, but it is what it is. I tried talking him into it, and he won't do it. So, and I'm not going to.
That's fine. When you moved to California, and I'm sure you ran into people and you started talking about high school football, what did you tell people about your high school career, your North Tonawanda lumberjack team, and maybe growing up in North Tonawanda?
Well, I would always tell them, especially growing up in the projects, and everybody says, "Oh, you grew up in the projects," like it was a bad thing. But I mean, look at the projects now; they look like condominiums. I mean, they're beautiful, but they've lasted all this time. But I always tell them, being myself and what the character part of this that they grew from that. A lot of people can relate to that too when they're going backwards too. But as a whole, I used to tell them how much it meant to me, especially when I moved from that. And it's like I'm said before, I knew everybody in town and moving in this area. In fact, I was trying to buy a building here to go in the restaurant business, and I got into a bad escrow. So I went to the phone book to find an attorney, and I closed my eyes and I just put my finger on the phone book, and that was my attorney. That was my second mistake. But anyways, yeah, I tell people that I really enjoyed my high school years at North Tonawanda High School.
We
And
talked about,
remembering too that the student body was so, I mean, there was 425 graduated from my class. And even before, we had double session. I mean, 1,000 kids walked those floors every day, Ed, so it was ironic. And now I don't know what the population is now, 38,000.
probably close to 28,000 at this point, North Tonawanda.
Wow.
We talked a lot about several things during this conversation. What would you like to talk about that I didn't ask you?
Well,
what's on your mind?
Well, there's a lot of things on my mind, but the things that I remember which was a learning curve for me, because when you think you're on top, you need to adjust, because all of a sudden certain things happens in your life, especially at high school age, that it's an education, and you have to take it as an education, and move on. And like I say, I can't forget it. It was probably the most enjoyable time of my life, to be honest with you, and the growing part of my life too. And like I say, my relationship with my dad wasn't all that good, but going to Penn State, gave me a sort of growing up thing too. And that's actually when I got hurt again. We're going backwards, but it's looking back at all that, it was all a part of education. I've had a good life, Ed. I've got 3 great sons. I did good for myself over the years, and I have a very beautiful home here. A good friend of mine now is Jimmy Pepsidero, which you probably know. He's we had a ball team back there. We played until I left there when I was 35 years old. Softball team, fast pitch, and we played King in his court, and we beat them. I don't know if you know who they are. You know who
Sure.
they are, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, we beat them twice that year. So, but Jerry Matecki is like another brother to me, which you probably know really well, right? He is, he's a great pitcher, and we always used to play against the third warders all the time, which always had an outstanding team. We played in the tournament. One thing, I got to tell you a story about. We played in a tournament in Niagara Falls. Ron Jaworski was leaving the next day to go to the Rams. And Bobby Kajowski, if you know Bobby,
yep.
Bobby Kajowski played for us. He hits a line shot down third base, pulled the third baseman off the bag, and he makes the throw to first base. Ron Jaworski's playing first base. He had to come inside the bag, okay, to tag Bob Kajowski. Bob Kajowski knew that Ron Jaworski, and knew who he was, that he was going to leave. Ron Jaworski stopped in his tracks because he didn't want to run him over. And Ron Jaworski stayed with us that whole tournament. We ended up winning the tournament in Niagara Falls. Ron Jaworski stayed with us that whole tournament because of what Bob Kajowski didn't do. Look, that's a great story. And of course, they call him the Polish rifle, right? You probably know that. Sure. But he was so gracious to stay with us, after Bobby doing that. I talked to Bobby. Bobby came and visit me a couple of years ago, and we've been in communication, but he's in Las Vegas. And his son just played golf with Josh Allen here.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a nice thing to have happen.
Yes, it is. So you send me a picture. I'll send you the picture. So it was a nice thing. Played 18 holes of golf with him. So
I want to wish you a happy birthday. I know tomorrow is your birthday. It'll be number 81 for you. But I got one last question for you.
Yes, sir.
I introduced you as Frank Castiglione, but the pronunciation and the spelling is Castiglione.
That's right.
Why the difference?
Well, Mr. Grapes is our announcer.
Dick Grapes, yes.
Yes. he had a hard time with my name. And he even said it. He said, well, we're going to name him Mr. Castiglione. Okay. And, it's kind of funny. My Uncle Leo, my Uncle Bill, there was like 4 families, Castiglione family, okay, in North Tonawanda. And they all became Castellines. Okay. So it's kind of funny. It's ironic that I used to get phone calls from my buddies from North Tonawanda, and they always say is they like they would disguise their voice and say they would say, "Is Frankie Castiglione there?" So I know it's somebody from North Tonawanda, right? Because here it's Castiglione, right? But it was ironic that Mr. Grapes couldn't pronounce that name. So yes, that's the story about my name.
Frank, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a lot of fun. It was well worth the wait, my friend.
Oh, I thank you, Ed, for your patience. Okay. Like I say, I try to get Johnny, and I hope he changes his mind. I don't think he's going to, knowing Johnny the way I do, but it is what it is, buddy. But I appreciate you. I appreciate what you do, Ed, because, being myself and what North Tonawanda High School meant to me in those years and how it made me grow and grew my character. I appreciate you, buddy. I really do.
We're just chronicling history, and I'm just the guy driving the bus right now. That's all. It's you guys who make it happen and have all the wonderful stories and have all the wonderful memories and have all the great statistics. So I want to thank you once again.
Thank you, sir.